So welcome. This is the September 19th meeting of the Bennington Community Police Advisory Review Board. I'm Kate Cost. I'm Vice Chair of CPARB and filling in for Kelly Carroll. Why don't we start at the end here and you can introduce yourselves.
Scott Richmond.
Jeff Dickerson.
Lindsay Brilliant.
Vicki Lamprin.
Jean Connor.
All right. Lindsay, could you read the town vision?
The vision statement for the town of Bennington. Bennington is a welcoming, engaged, inclusive, and resilient community where everyone, regardless of identity, shares in our vitality and benefits from an outstanding quality of life.
All right, thank you. Could we have a motion for consent of the agenda for tonight?
So moved.
Okay, could I get a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? All right, so the agenda is approved. Can I get approval of the previous agenda's minutes? Can I get a motion on that?
So moved.
Can I get a second? All in favor? Say aye. Opposed? Are there any abstentions?
I'll abstain because I wasn't here.
All right, thank you. All right, we don't have anybody who has signed up for public comment. We don't even have anybody here, so, okay, we'll move on. BPD update, Cam. And as you're getting settled, Cam, I want to just let folks know that we've received 2 compliments on the police department. They're both from Pownell. The one is from Michael Gardner, Chair of the Pownell Select Board, who called Chief Doucette and thanked him for the Bennington Police Department's involvement in some recent events in Pownell. He advised that the Pownell Constable spoke highly of the Bennington Police Department. During the meeting last night, we received this just a couple of days ago, so I'm not sure when their select board meeting is, and they really appreciated the support from members of the Bennington Police Department. We don't have any details on this because it's an ongoing situation. So, but the other one is also from, let's see if I get the right piece of paper, from Pownell. Let's see, where am I? And my pieces of paper. Okay, this is from Roy Brown, who is the manager at the Vital Delivery Solutions in Brattleboro, Vermont. And he sent an email through the system. I just want to thank Chief Paul Doucette and the department staff for changing a tire for my driver last week. He was raving about your department's hospitality and appreciated the rescue. Thanks for getting him back on the road. He's 83 years old. The driver was 83. And the Public Works Department assisted with that. So kudos to the police department. Thank you so much.
It's always nice to hear those.
Cam.
So good evening. Again, my name is Lieutenant Camille Grandy. I appreciate the time coming to meet with all of you and speak to you to let you know what's going on in the last month with BPD. The chief is sorry that he can't be here himself, but I get to be here with you. So,
Cam?
So some of the things that have been going on since the last time we met, the impound storage and animal control buildings are almost at conclusion. You can't hear me? Oh, sorry. There we go.
Yeah, it's got to be like right by your mouth.
Can you hear me now? All right. It's kind of weird that you have to bend over and talk to you. I feel kind of strange.
Can't be lengthened.
Anyways.
It's up to you.
Anyways, well, I'll continue. So that's in its final stages. Hopefully be completed by the end of the month. You know, a lot of work went into this from town staff, from Department of Public Works, personnel from Building and Grounds, as well as Bennington Police Department staff. who worked hard over the last several months to get this accomplished. It looks amazing if you get a chance to just to take a drive by. They did a wonderful job, and we're very, very excited about getting that those buildings operational for our needs. Data. The 2023 traffic stop and race data has been sent to the Vermont Criminal Justice Council and the Office of Racial Equity. That was sent on August 29th. That data is what's compiled of all of 2023 traffic stops and whether or not a vehicle was searched. And there's all types of demographics, whether contraband was found, a little about the person, their age, their ethnicity, their gender, and the outcome of the traffic stop. So that's all been sent and in whole form to those two entities, and then I take that information and I break it down into quarters for you, and eventually it will, like I've done on past years, and that's information will be going to the chief hopefully by the end of next week, so he can finally review it and then send it off to you. BenStat continues to work monthly, and we are in a right now we're changing leadership. My team is still going to be involved, but John Rogers, who worked diligently over the last several months, he's stepping aside, and Gina Conda from Probation and Parole, Department of Corrections, she'll be working with myself and Kimberly Krozik in continuing those efforts with BenStat. A lot of good things coming out of that. You guys were able to get a little presentation from John Rogers, I believe, last month, and we're going to continue working with that information for high-frequency individuals and high-frequency locations for events that are happening here in our community. We participated in 2 campaigns since the last time we met. One was Slow Down New England. That was a one-day campaign back in July, since the last time I met with you. Out of 12 agencies that participated with that campaign within the state of Vermont, Bennington PD did fabulously. I'm very, very impressed by the personnel of Bennington Police Department. We're number 1 in the state out of those 12 agencies that participated with our data results. We had, in one day, we had 60 contacts, 38 speeding violations, and 11 other traffic violations with 1 arrest for DUI. So a one-day event was pretty successful for us. The second campaign was a little bit longer. That was the Labor Day DUI campaign. That started on August 16th and went through the Labor Day weekend. That's a lot of work over a 2-week period. And again, in that 2-week period, members of the Bennington Police Department conducted 392 hours of patrol for motor vehicle enforcement. They stopped 449 vehicles. They detected 7 impaired operators who were arrested for DWI. One was charged with driving under the influence of drugs, and 21 other motor vehicle related violations. And those vary from excessive speed to driving with suspended license, consuming marijuana while operating a motor vehicle, and other violations, and issued a total of 232 tickets. So it was a successful campaign for us, and I applaud the members of the police department. This is above and beyond their normal duties of answering calls and in between calls. So a lot of time spent on making sure that our roadways are safe for everyone. Bennington police officers continue to do foot patrols in the downtown area. That seems to be, we're receiving a lot of positive feedback from that. And again, they're doing those foot patrols in between calls for service. And those foot patrols include the River Walkway downtown area, as well as the shopping plazas. We got to remember, we can't forget about the plazas and the retail establishments on like Kosher Drive and Northside Drive and North Bennington Road. So not only are you seeing foot patrols in the downtown area, and those are the ones we're getting the most feedback on, but the officers are also doing that in the plaza areas. Chief Doucette and I provided a safety talk for the Garlicktown volunteers on the Thursday night before Garlicktown. That consists of, just the do's and don'ts for volunteers and what to do in case of an emergency or some type of medical event, and provided them with all kinds of safety information so that they could do their jobs during the festival, making the festival successful. Members of the Bennington Police Department, along with other Bennington first responders, participated in the 9/11 Remembrance Memorial at Walmart. If you haven't seen that, the Walmart staff did an amazing job with the ceremony. Employees took on their own time of making sure that people that lost their lives on 9/11 were not forgotten. They had storyboards all in front of their store, of the people who lost their lives, and they did that on their own time and their own money out of their own pocket. So Chief Doucette also spoke at the events and outlined the events of 9/11 to the attendees. National DEA Drug Takeback will be Saturday, October 26th. I'm just kind of giving you a leeway into that and getting that information out to the public as soon as possible. We will participate again with that. That's usually twice a year, once in the springtime and once in the fall. Again, that will be Saturday, October 26th from 10 o'clock until 2 o'clock in the afternoon. We obviously encourage community members to return their unused or expired medication to the Bennington Police Department or any other drop-off location. Bennington Police Department has 2 drop-off boxes in their lobby. We need 2 because we're very successful in with that program. Training, we continue to work on our mandatory and elective trainings. We're currently working on our mandatory training, which is the CEW, Conductive Electronic Weapon, which is the TASER, for those who don't know, are not familiar with that. Firearms training has already been scheduled for October, and use of force. And all members of sworn personnel have already completed domestic violence training for this year. Every 2 years, you have to take domestic violence, and we just completed our personnel's annual training for that, semi-annual training, twice a year training, excuse me. Elective, some of the elective trainings, we sent 2 officers away to the DEA Basic Narcotics Training class, which was a 40-hour class up in Johnson, Vermont, and with some of our younger staff that are still learning those types of trainings and workarounds. So we sent them away for a week to Johnson to work with the DEA to learn on basic narcotics investigations. We're also working on bringing, through the Vermont Department of Health and Vermont State Highway Safety Office, child seat installation technician course. So we can, we're hoping to send 4 of our members to this class. That will be sworn and non-sworn personnel. And that's always a great tool to have. So we can have people come to the department who need their car seats checked and make sure they're properly installed. It's not like when I was younger with young children, the car seats seemed to be pretty simple, but these things now are pretty complicated, or at least they look complicated. I wouldn't want to be a parent to have to install one. So we're looking to do that, and in October to send 4 of our members to that class, and hopefully we'll get that out on social media so we can start taking care of some of the community needs around that topic. They'll also participate in safety fairs, not just for people who, come to the police station, but they'll participate in safety fairs around the state, at least the southern part of the state, and car seat inspection stations, so people can just bring their cars on a kind of Saturday and have them checked to make sure they're properly installed. Staffing. We're very, very pleased to report that our communication staff is currently fully staffed with our latest hire of Mariah Cooley. Mariah comes to us from experience with communications from the state of New York. She has now completed her training, and she is working solo at this point, and she is doing a wonderful job. So we're very, very excited to say that our communication staff is full at this time. Knock on wood. I don't want to jinx myself. And giving a little bit of a breather to some of the other full-time staff that have been picking up those extra shifts, covering for that opening. We're also pleased to report that we've hired a Christopher Miller. Mr. Miller is a level 3 certified police officer. He comes to us from another Vermont agency. He is local. And he is, again, full-time certified, so we don't need to send him to the academy. He's working with Bennington Police Department field training officers right now just to acclimate himself to the Bennington Police Department and the town of Bennington and how we operate as a police agency. But he's only got a couple more weeks, and I'm looking forward to that report from our field training officers that show that he's proficient and they're confident that he can do the duties of a Bennington police officer. And he will be out there, and I'm sure you'll meet him at some point. That's pretty much all I have. If anybody has any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer any questions about my report.
I have one question.
Sure.
I have one question, and I probably should have asked this earlier. Does your traffic data include state of residence?
It does not.
Okay. That's just a curious
It gives
question.
location, so it can break down. So when you receive it, you're going to be able to break down the location of the where the traffic
Of the
stop
event.
occurred.
Yeah. Yeah. The reason why I ask is because one of our charges is to sort of do some comparison, and of course the traffic data would be a wonderful place to do that. But okay, well that's good to know.
It doesn't give residency.
Yeah, and I wouldn't expect it to, but I thought I'd ask just in case. All right, thanks. Any other questions? Vicki?
Where is the address of the animal control building?
Well, it's on Orchard Road, right across from Molly Stark. I couldn't give you the actual physical address.
No, I just
but
wanted to know.
You can't miss it if you're traveling north on past Molly Stark. It's right there on the left. It's a beautiful 2 buildings, and the DPW did a nice job grading it, and it looks wonderful.
Your dogs will be happy.
Yeah.
Yes.
Jeannie, you had a question?
Yeah, one really quick one. Are you doing Socktober again this year?
Yes, we are. I did forget to put that on my
Okay.
on my notes today. We are participating in Socktober. I did meet with Kelly, who she organizes that and provides us with the poster. But yes, Bennington Police Department is going to participate in Socktober again. That's already confirmed. Thank you for bringing that up.
Good. And I have one other question. When you're doing the foot patrol at the plazas in downtown, could you give us a sense of what issues the officers are encountering and how they respond to them?
I haven't seen 2 issues, but I can tell you that officers are greeted by merchants from downtown, as well as people that reside in the area of the Riverwalk. The feedback that we're getting is positive, that it's more of a not so much issues that they're identifying, is that they're engaging with the community and talking with the community. Mostly is, hey, what is something going on? And the officers, no, we're just out here doing foot patrols, and that's where it opens that dialogue. So we're seeing a lot of that. I'm sure that they're experiencing some issues, but nothing on anything that's jumping out to report.
And I'm assuming,
I could add to that.
okay,
I was just going to say, because I talked to an officer today, he was over on School Street, and, but he's also been patrolling Silver and Imperial. And he echoed exactly what you said about people just greeting him and
That's
saying
great.
thank you and happy to have him there,
so I guess I'm assuming then it's more being done as a preventative measure of, bad things happening on Main Street. So it'll be interesting to see if the incidents go down.
Yeah, I mean, we could always revisit that and look at, some of those quality of life issues that we've been experiencing over the summer and see, from, the last couple of months and where we're at with that. I can tell you that the officers seem to enjoy that. Getting out of the car, sometimes you get stuck behind that car from call to call to call, and then you're surrounded by technology the whole time. So when you're in the car, it's a hot day, you got the windows up, you got the air conditioner going, and then you're typing on that MDT, mobile data terminal, for those, so please, John, go. You kind of closed off from the community, but getting out of the car and walking around, you have that interaction, which is, just vital.
Great. Thank you.
That actually was part of my question, was had you gotten any positive feedback from the officers about foot patrol?
Yes, and there is a little bit of a no there. When you, just for an example, the shift supervisor in the morning and the evening, because we now run 4 teams, 12-hour shifts, 2 shifts at night, 2 teams during the day. And at roll call, they give the assignments out. And it does get a little frustrating. For an example, Monday, from 6 o'clock in the morning to 6 o'clock in the night, they had 33 calls for service. And that we're starting to experience a pickup for calls of service again. Some of that has to do with, school back in session and complaints at the schools. But, when you have 33 calls for service in a 10 to 12-hour period, it's impossible to do a foot patrol because all those calls for service, you're going from call to call to call. You still have to require to do all the documentation with all the paperwork that comes along with that. I think that when they can get out on the foot patrol, it's a breath of fresh air, no pun intended. But they're not out, going from another call to another call. They can actually get out there and walk around and talk to people and be more proactive than responsive.
Is part of the new officer training any training on like community history? The history of the community, is that part of the training?
Not so much training. That's part of our interview process. One of the things that the Chief Doucette strives on is that when he interviews a potential new employee, that is a topic that he constantly brings up, and he before that person comes back for a second interview, must know something about Bennington.
Okay. Last question. Is there any incentives for the narcotic take back? There are? What are the incentives?
There are incentives? Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
Yeah. Are there incentives?
No.
Okay.
No, it's just that as we can collect, it's not. It's mostly prescription prescription and unused medication or expired. But we will take anything as long as it's the only thing we do not take are needles.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Okay. A couple things. So one, on the drug take back, it's an event over a certain day and time, but are people able to bring drugs at any time?
Yeah, those are 2 days that it's a national campaign, and it spotlights the take back that we do 365.
Okay.
So yes, we take medication 24 hours a day, 365 a year. So, but those are 2 days that we spotlight
to get the
that
attention.
take back.
But if somebody had something, they could take it.
That's
if they didn't
correct.
make it that time.
That's correct.
Anytime. Okay. And then when you were talking about the child seat training, it made me wonder, is that something with traffic stops that you're looking for when there are car seats in the vehicle to make sure they're properly used?
Yeah, so just on normal patrols, that's something that the officers do.
Yeah.
But we also have grants from the state, which is called Occupant Protection Grant, specifically for that type of violation. We're looking for seatbelt violations and/or child seat violations.
Okay. And then just one more comment, I guess, on the listening session that I went to, it was with a lot of the downtown businesses, and they had brought up that they really like the foot patrols because they think it is a deterrent just by having you walking around, that helps ensure that maybe something that might have happened isn't going to happen. And that might be, I guess, maybe you can look at statistics and see if there's a drop. It might be hard to pinpoint, when the foot patrols, but I think just being there at all probably has a positive effect, and they appreciate it, I'm sure.
Well, I can say that an officer on a foot beat or a cruiser on a corner is a deterrent. If someone thinks that the police are right there in that area, it is a deterrent, whether you're on foot or cruiser. What the foot patrol does is it engages the community, and it gives them opportunity for the community to come up and talk to the officer or vice versa.
Yeah.
I can tell you from my years on the road, I would handle probably more questions from the public when I stopped and got a cup of coffee or on my lunch break or out on foot patrol, that they're more likely to come up and talk to you when you have a cup of coffee in your hand and ask a question that they just wouldn't stop in their day to call the police department or walk into the police department to ask that question. So getting out on foot, it does engage the community and gives the community a chance to approach the officer and have that back and forth dialogue.
And there actually is research that backs that up from the Police Foundation, I think, back in the 80s, that foot patrol both increases officer job satisfaction and the sense of safety in the community. So there's research.
Thanks.
Any other questions or comments? I have just one more. In my conversation with the officer this morning, he did mention that he really enjoys walking the beat, if you will, getting to know people, getting to know the neighborhood. And we talked about how it just helped people feel, because I live in one of the areas that he patrols, that he walks. And I know my neighbors have all mentioned that they're really gratified, happy and grateful to see him on the road. On the sidewalk.
It definitely made a difference going to the 12-hour shift. I don't have to tell you, you already know that we're struggling with staffing even to this day, but 2 years ago we were at the lowest that I've ever seen in my 26-year career, and it was very, very difficult to get officers out on foot beat, but changing our hours of operation with our staff has made a difference to be able to get the officers out there on the foot beat, even though we have still have high call volume and still down several officers. I can tell you, I did a long time on midnights, and I used to do foot beat at 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning, and you still would talk to people, because there's a lot of night owls in this community that just like to go out and walk. So, I always enjoyed it myself.
Are you doing foot patrol all night long?
No.
Not you personally, but
Foot beats are happening all night, all
night long,
times of the day.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not just when the businesses are open. It's through both shifts. I've seen foot patrols at 11 o'clock at night. I've seen foot patrols at 2 o'clock in the morning. When I come in the morning and I go over the previous calls for service of the day, and I see them at all times of the day.
Wow, that's good.
I even get out there. I gotta get out of the office. Sitting behind the desk is just, so I get out there once in a while.
Yeah. Any other thoughts, comments, questions? All right, thank you so very much.
Thank you for your time.
Next on our agenda is a community policing discussion. This is something that we've been doing the last couple of months, so I'm hoping we can continue with that, since it will inform future planning and So anybody want to start us off? Scott?
I'll start it off. When I went to the Turning Point cookout,
Soberfest?
yeah, I spoke with some of them, about community policing. And one of the things they suggested is when the police department is called for a DUI or an alcohol-related or drug-related problem, they have people on call that would be willing to come if they could help in any way. And so that was their suggestion, to help the police department with, especially their clients.
Yeah, and my understanding is that the police department is already engaging with Turning Point on several. Tam, do you want to respond to that a little bit?
I can certainly, I'm going to go to this one. I can certainly answer that. We do collaborate with Turning Point. Turning Point has provided us with a QR code. So the officer involved has a situation where the person is involved with some type of SUD, whether it's alcohol or drugs. The officer can pull out the department-issued cell phone, take the QR code, and immediately send the information to Turning Point. So that happens, and we do the same thing now with PAVE.
Yeah, QR codes are great.
So are they involved very often?
Are the Turning Point?
Yeah.
They don't come out to the calls as they're happening. They used to. We used to be able to call someone to come and respond with us.
Yeah.
And that doesn't happen anymore. Now they think that the benefit is now, and someone can correct me if I'm wrong, the benefit is to see that person a day later, after they're out of that
Crisis mode.
crisis time, when they can actually interact with them.
Because the person I spoke with was concerned about, for instance, if somebody needed a ride home, they would be willing to come out and help. So
I'm not aware of that.
Yeah.
It was beneficial when Turning Point and their peer support counselors used to come. We used to call them out. It was a rapid deployment. It was something that we started several years ago. And as soon as an officer, for an example, an officer is dispatched to an overdose, the communication specialist would immediately page out a peer support counselor, and they would respond right to the scene and meet the officer there, and it sometimes would take over, and the officer would be able to free to go, deal with another call.
That's great.
And that worked great for us. I don't know how well it worked for Turning Point, but that was something that I would like to see again.
Yeah.
But it all comes down to Turning Point being able to staff it and have a person come out when we need them.
My understanding is that there's been some funding issues with that program.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's the most difficult part about your collaborations with community partners, that you may have the resources just because that's what you're doing, right?
Right.
But the nonprofits, substance abuse, mental health agencies might not have the funding for the staffing to do that.
Yeah, it was a
the
great
capacity
program.
to do that.
It was well received by our staff.
That's my understanding.
And it was well received by the community. When we we had an overdose, for an example, and the officer was trying to get the person, the officer gave Narcan, medical came, and the person didn't want to go to the hospital for continued care. And we couldn't convince the person, or rescue couldn't convince. If Turning Point had a representative there, the peer, counselor, they could spend some time with that person and hopefully get that person up to, some longer medical care. Because we all know that Narcan only works for so much, and someone could go back into an overdose, after emergency services left.
Would it be okay if I contacted that person again and found out more information from there?
I was just going to say, let's have Kelly talk to Margay
Yeah.
and find out what some of that story is. because that might be just that one staff member's experience, and it might be a bigger issue. So no sense in.
I know that they still run a similar program with the ER, and they do have on-call staff. So if the police did need support, they could call on-call, kind of similar to PAVE's hotline. We have on-call, but then also a referral process.
At the time, they had 2 different teams. And the team that worked out of the hospital would not come out into the field.
Yeah.
So I'm not quite sure if that person would come out into the field.
That actually would be the question, is if their on-call could. And it could be also an insurance issue. I know that with workman's comp, especially the last few years, it's been really hard for social service agencies to get coverage if people are going on those emergency crisis calls.
Yeah, definitely a bigger conversation.
Yeah, which is why I'm going to refer it to Kelly.
It's a complex thing.
Do you still have the UCS counselor? Wasn't there somebody that was?
Embedded mental health clinician? Yes, we do.
And they don't go out to any of those calls?
They only work about 20 hours a week now.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not full-time anymore, it's only 20 hours.
Right, you share them with the state police?
No.
No?
Not anymore.
So it's
State police
only
have their
20?
own, and Bennington has their own now for 20 hours a week.
Okay.
Is that a funding issue?
Correct.
Yeah, okay, good to know. Good to know.
Thank you.
Thank you
You're welcome.
very much. Other thoughts on community policing? I mean, we've talked about the 7 different principles, and certainly some of the things that we've just been discussing with Cam, his presentation, et cetera, about crime prevention. You know, the patrols certainly do that. The expectations of officers, that's one of the things about community policing. I just wondered if people had thoughts as related to this, because certainly this feeds into some of the discussion we're going to have later tonight on the resolution changes.
Kate, just in reviewing for this meeting, I was doing some research on different community policing models, and I think it's important to remember that community policing is a broad umbrella, and there are many different approaches that fall under it. And one that I think I would love to have more conversation on is relationship-based policing. And kind of, you know, what the goal of that is, and how it almost it fits in with what is already going on in our community. It's establishing and maintaining individual relationships with community members, collateral, professionals, with the purpose, goal of collective problem solving and management of complex community issues. And it's been used in a lot of correct me if I'm wrong, Cam, I might get this wrong, problem-oriented policing models as well. So really focusing on a specific problem and working with those collateral community stakeholders to come up with steps while building relationships. So I think it might be something that we want to look a little bit more into. Community policing is wonderful, but we need to have it, I think we have to have a more focused model and approach if we're going to get down to like nitty-gritty stuff.
I mean, just thinking about some of the initiatives that the department is already involved in, like Project Alliance, BenStat, how we might be able to capitalize on those, and whether or not it would be helpful for CPARB members to be more involved in some of that. Because there's only so much officers from the department can do. You can't be at 2 places at one time. That's just impossible. Sorry. The magic wand just doesn't go that far. So it might be something that CPARB members attempt to become more involved in that, to represent the department and foster that engagement.
Yeah.
You know?
I was just going to say, I guess, not at this point, like to put Cam on the spot or anybody else, but would it be worth asking the police department to think about it and provide feedback of what they think may help them in that role as well, versus us trying to figure it out?
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I think that should be a big part of our mission.
I think we had discussed in a previous meeting developing some type of survey for feedback from officers themselves, and I think that that would be really important, because in the community policing model and everything that falls under that, you know, officers really are, their personalities are a tool. So really getting a good sense of how our officers are feeling, and that's going to lead us in what direction, you know, to go. So
Sure. But it might be that we have actually a listening session with officers.
I would love that.
So that we can find out from their perspective how this is working, what they see as community policing, because it may be that we've missed essential steps in here, or essential concepts, ideas, and so that might be something that we want to try to do in this next year.
It would also just allow you to meet more of the officers and have them
Sure.
meet us, you.
Yep. No, that's right. Any other thoughts or comments on community policing?
So I don't want to sound negative or anything, but I think about this quite a bit. We've been doing this for coming up on 3 years, and I don't really think we've done much to enforce community policing. I think the police are doing that on their own. Is it worth to have a discussion that says, do we actually need an advisory review board for something? We've had one complaint in 2.5 years that we've investigated, and it was nothing. The officer was cleared in seconds because he did everything correctly. The police are involved in all these programs. They're doing so much with the community, the foot patrols and everything else that they talk about, the different trainings. So I don't think it's unheard of to have the discussion, is this board required? Take a look at what we were put together for, what we've done, what the police have done, and is it really something that we need? We don't have a lot of public involvement. We don't have really much to do except talk every month and go to listening sessions. So, like I said, I don't want to sound negative, but is this a discussion that we should have? Is, you know, the board required, or is it something that the police can handle on their own? Because it seems to me like they are.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point. I mean, that's why we're going to review that resolution and maybe make changes to that. I think that's why we sought to engage the community as a mediator between, not a mediator, I'm sorry, a liaison between the department and the community. And of course, the Charter Review Committee is, which was an announcement that I was going to have later on the agenda, is determining whether or not CPARB should be part of the charter. So I think the discussion of what our purpose is becomes important. And if we, because my impression is that we don't see ourselves as an oversight board, correct?
We are not an oversight.
And that we do see ourselves more as a liaison. Is that, have I got that? Is that correct? So if that's the case, then, because our listening sessions did point to the fact that people don't know what community policing is. They don't know how it's different than traditional policing. And so it may be that that's our role in that, which is why I think that it's on the agenda for tonight, that we decide whether or not we want to meet every other month, so that we're not having, we're not speaking to an empty room here. And we don't, as far as we know, there's not a lot of people who view us on CAT. So I think what you raised is really important, Jeff.
I do think, though, that the listening sessions did inform a little bit when it came to the increase in foot patrols. So that's a positive that comes out of that. And is there an issue needed for advisory? I don't know. I don't think we do away with advisory just because issues are not being reported. But I do think it's a discussion that should happen, but I don't think there necessarily needs to be problems to maintain an advisory board.
I'd be really curious to get the police feedback from the officers that are out on foot patrol, before we make any rash decision like that, to see if there's something we could do to make it better.
And more effective, right? Because we had 6 listening sessions in 2 months. We hope to have more in October and November. So I guess we'll see how that goes. We'll take a look at that, but I think that definitely should be a continued conversation on, because I wouldn't frame it as productivity as much as our purpose and effectiveness in that. And one of the challenges, I think, is to determine how do we measure effectiveness? How do we know that we are effective in that? Any other thoughts? Comments? No? Okay. Then we'll move on to that board meeting schedule for the 4th Thursday rather than the 3rd Thursday. What we have found is that every other month, our meeting schedule is actually in the resolution that we meet on a monthly basis. So that will be part of whatever we present to the select board on that. But do we have any discussion on, can I open the floor to discussion on the meeting schedule for the 4th Thursday of the month? And if anybody would have any objections or comments, thoughts on that?
I think, is the only problem Thanksgiving?
I think so.
Yeah, okay, yeah. But we could adjust.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's my understanding. And there's nothing in the resolution that says what day of the week we have to meet on. So,
Is this going into effect in October?
no.
No, not till it goes to the select board.
That doesn't need to go to the select board
Okay.
because it's not in the resolution.
Right, okay.
But my understanding is that we would not start it next month.
Okay.
That's my understanding.
Yeah, so in December.
Yeah, so that we would start it in December, just given Thanksgiving. Might as well.
And I
Fresh
think,
slate.
was it the 3rd Thursday seemed to have a lot of other things happening, so that's the reasoning
Yeah,
to move
we're
it.
competing with a lot of town events
Yeah.
that people on the board might actually want to attend,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And certainly precludes attendance here when you get a chance to go to a festival instead. Or some other kind of event, music event.
When does it fall in December?
It's the 20th.
The 26th
Is the 4th.
So we couldn't start until January.
Yeah, which makes sense, first of the year.
And then we'd have to just deal with Thanksgiving and
Yeah,
holiday on a yearly basis.
yeah.
Okay. I make a motion, we move it to the 4th Thursday, starting in January of 2025.
I'll second that.
Okay, all in favor?
Hi.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? The motion passes. And so, starting January 25, we'll meet the 4th Thursday. Thank you. Okay. Future board goals and activities, and this is when we plan to review the resolution. I brought copies so that people would have it in color. Vicki, you've got one in here.
I have one, Kate.
You have one. Scott, Jean, do you need copies? No?
got
Scott,
mine.
do you need a copy of the color of the resolution? Yes. Yes, could you pass that for me? Sorry. Scott and Jeff, do you have copies?
Yeah, could I have one?
Sure.
Thank you. Sorry.
Anybody else need copies?
Okay.
Okay, so,
No, it's
well,
just easier
color
to see.
will help you distinguish what the differences are. So here you go, yep. Whoops, there you go, sure. Okay. So what my thought was is that this would be a reading of this, so that people could see and those who watch us on CAT could actually, does that make sense to do that?
Yeah.
At least for that first page. Okay, so this is the resolution that was passed by the Select Board on March 12th of 2022. And so the original is that the Bennington Select Board, through its authority, hereby establishes a town board to be known as the Community Policing Advisory Review Board to provide meaningful involvement in safety, equity, and community policing efforts. So the change is that first sentence remains the same. The Bennington Select Board, through its authority, hereby establishes a town board to be known as the Community Policing Advisory Review Board, period. By supporting the problem-solving and organizational strategies embodied in the philosophy of community policing, it is expected that CPARB will act as a liaison between the community, the Select Board, and the Bennington Police Department to foster safety, trust, and equity in law enforcement. Okay. Any thoughts on that? Any questions on that? Okay.
We've never met with the Select Board.
Well, the Select Board was the one that establishes us, and we have a liaison from the
Right,
Select Board.
Okay, so,
And we do have to report to them, right?
And we anticipate providing them a report in June, because that's the end of this year. Okay. I'm not going to ask for any motions to accept or any of that. We're just going to read it through.
Yeah, and I have some questions.
Oh, sure,
Yeah,
okay.
please.
Was anything?
No,
else?
after. No,
Okay,
after.
okay. So the rest of the resolution remains the same. Does anybody want me to read that? Okay, and then we get to goals. I need a drink of water. Okay. Excuse me. In partnership with the Select Board, the Town of Bennington, and the Bennington Police Department, the CPARB has the following goals. So the original was recommendations on police department training and community collaboration efforts. The change is recommend police department training that will focus on crime prevention strategies and techniques consistent with community collaboration efforts. So the change there explicitly includes one of the principles of community policing, crime prevention.
Yeah.
Okay? And community collaboration, where the other did not at all, except for the community collaboration.
So,
Go ahead.
I'm a little confused what we mean by community collaboration.
Community collaboration is, for example, when we did the backpack
Okay.
thing, when we do other things within the community, but it's also about community partnerships. So BenStat, Turning Point, all of those are community collaboration efforts.
All working together.
Yeah, that's all included.
So in the concept of training, like when they did mental health training, mental health first aid, that would be in line with community collaborations.
Yeah. Also, when they do their training on implicit bias, that's also part of that. Okay, the second goal of the original was recommendations and review of proposed, new, and existing Bennington Police Department policies and procedures. That was a period there. And the changes recommend Bennington Police Department policies and procedures to support and ensure a culture of community policing. Any thoughts on that change?
I just have one suggestion, and it's not huge. I feel like the second bullet should be first, because it's more broad, and then it gets a little more granular as you go down.
Sure. So that's one. Because these are all in order of the original resolution,
Yeah.
just so folks know.
Yep.
So then the that would be
And if
two.
people disagree, it's no big deal.
Kate, my only question is, would this then mean that when there are new policies that the Bennington Police Department develops, that they do not have to present them to be reviewed by us? Because in the original language, it kind of sounds like they would. But taking that new piece out and existing, it doesn't have that same bite. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no,
Okay.
I guess it had to do with whether or not we were, the extent to which we were oversight.
Yeah, that's where it gets messy, right?
That's the part that gets a little mushy. And it really has to do with the relationship of this board to the department, right? And right now, what we get is we get a list of, and it's on their website, so anybody can go to it. On the website is a list of all of their policies and procedures.
So what if there was an addition of something that said, and review and offer feedback on any proposed new policies and procedures, something along those lines? With that?
Sure.
Yeah,
I mean-
because it's just feedback. I mean.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think what my kind of because obviously I did some of this, and my concern here was that we could then have an activity that was related to that. So it might be that the activity that's related to that recommendation would be in the activities part.
Okay, yeah,
So-
that makes sense. So like annual review or something like that.
Yeah.
Okay, no, that makes
Yeah.
total sense.
But I want to, so let's make sure that that's there.
Okay.
And so keep that in mind.
So I guess it brings, I was going to wait till the end, but maybe now is good.
Yeah.
Just, is the wording of this up to us?
Yes, I mean, because we're proposing a change.
Okay.
So the wording is on us,
Where did these proposed changes come from?
me.
Okay.
Me and Kelly.
Okay.
So what I did was I looked at this to try to make the goal sort of a statement of something that was not just aspirational, but something that could be measured, right? And then we have an activity that's later, that's right below that, that would measure the achievement of that goal. Because
Yeah.
what I found was, and I've mentioned this before in our meetings, I was having a hard time separating what's a goal and what's an activity. It seemed like they were all mushed together, and some of the activities were in the goals and vice versa. So what I tried to do was separate those two things so that there's so that every goal has an action by us, and that action is something that we can measure. So that, because like you, Jeff, it's about, or Scott, I'm sorry.
Jeff.
It is
He's
about,
Scott.
yeah, no, I know. It is about our effectiveness, right? It is about not just our, because I dislike the word productivity, because that's not what we're about. We're about relationship building. And I don't see that as a product. That's just my view of that. So, but I think that the issue you raise is an important one. And by then having them connected in that way, we can be more effective in the role that we're supposed to have. If that makes sense. Okay.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. Any other thoughts? Okay, then the third one is recommend positive, oh, I'm sorry, I want to give you what was used to be there. Review of anonymized data on complaints and compliments for the purposes of identifying problems, patterns, and positive actions. The new change is recommend positive actions that reduce complaints and support trust, transparency, and accountability. Any thoughts on that one? Okay. The next one is, the original is analysis of town-wide safety data with a focus on equity and areas of need. And the goal is, the change is, identify safety concerns and areas of need within the community. So that's the goal. Okay. The next one is the original. Interrupt me if you have any thoughts or want to make comments here. Comparison of local data and other Vermont data to other Vermont municipalities, state and national trends. So the change is compare local data to other comparable sized Vermont municipalities and state and local trends in community policing efforts. The reason why the sort of explanation or justification of that is it doesn't make sense in my world to compare us to Chicago or Albany when they're like 4 or 5 bazillion times the size of Vermont. And they may or may not have a community policing board or community policing unit.
Or similar communities.
Oh, yeah, no, but, you know, Albany's very different.
Yes.
And, yeah. So, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I just had a question. Am I talking too much as the liaison?
No, this is, we appreciate it. No,
Okay, because I'm not sure what the liaison needs to be quiet. Okay.
We want the liaison to be engaged.
Okay, if
Yes.
I'm talking too much, just please tell me.
Yeah,
Okay.
we'll tell you.
The bullet where it starts with recommends positive actions,
Yes.
the original one included language about data. I'm assuming that it seems like you covered the issue of data in the one that you just were working on right now, because I was thinking, reading the third bullet, what was there and what's proposed are very, very different.
Exactly.
But the data is covered below. Okay,
Exactly.
thank you.
Yeah, there seemed to be a lot of redundancy. Whoever created these, in my understanding that these were a recommendation to the select board by a different group.
Honestly, I don't remember. But
Yeah, that was
you're
my
probably right.
understanding in terms of history, as far as I've been able to tell. And so they were really concerned about data. And while we are concerned about data too, we don't want to be obsessed.
That's fine. I'm really glad, though, that data is still in
Oh,
there.
yeah, yeah.
Because I
And-
think
and
those
data-
people
you'll
that
see
were interested in data,
activities. Yeah, data will be there.
they would have wanted it back in.
Yeah,
So-
no, that's right, that's right. Any other thoughts or questions? Okay. The next one is, the original was fostering of collaborative efforts within the community to hear all voices. So it's a very simple change, just foster collaborative efforts within the community to hear all voices. And then there's no change at the last one. Those goes so far okay? All right. So then, activities, in collaboration with BPD, CPARB will. And there is no change in that first one. Okay, review required training for BPD and outcomes, et cetera. Make recommendations on additional areas for training such as de-escalation. So that's an activity. We will
And that
review
agrees
those.
with goal 1.
Pardon me?
It agrees with goal 1.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the second one is the original was to develop a database for analysis of automatized compliments and complaints to be utilized by CPARB for the purposes of identifying problems, patterns, and positive actions. So the only change to that one is to develop and analyze a database of that. Does any concerns about that? So instead of develop a database for analysis, we're going to develop and analyze a database of automatized. Okay. The next one is analysis of town-wide safety data with a focus on equity and areas of need. So this is, that was the original. The change is analyze town-wide safety and traffic data with a focus on equity and identification of areas of need.
Okay.
Thoughts, comments?
How do we, what does focus on equity mean?
Well, and that's a really good question, because how do we measure equity? I mean, we would have to come up with, and obviously they're out there in the metaverse, whatever, right? In terms of what equity means. But typically, I'm pulling stuff out of my old days here. When we talk about theories of justice, which is what community policing is really, its foundation is, we talk about equity and fairness. And we don't have fairness in here at all, but we do talk about equity. And sometimes those two things can be seen as similes, comparable, but I don't know. I think we would have to really think about how we would define, we define equity.
I don't know if we would have to define equity because the traffic data already goes to be reviewed for equity. So we kind of already know what that means. And the traffic data is reviewed for racial equity. Just do percentages based on the percentage of racial breakdown of your community. If you have 90% African Americans being pulled over, but your community is only 10% African American, that's not equity.
But this doesn't say racial equity.
No, but the traffic data that we review is racial traffic data.
But see, there's also equity in income.
There is.
And so if
but that is not data. We do not have access.
No,
to that
but but we don't have hard data on that. But we do have qualitative data on that from our listening sessions.
Yes.
So as we get more listening sessions, right? So because one of the big concerns in a community like ours that has such a small percentage of people of color, that there is an income disparity, not necessarily with ethnicity, but certainly in income. There's disparity. There's disparity in terms of housing quality. I mean, we could go down the list, and there's no reason for us to go down the list tonight.
But with this specific activity, we're talking about the traffic data that we're supplied with, which is focused on racial equity.
And safety data.
And safety data.
And safety data. And the safety data we get from the town survey.
Yes.
So that tells us about neighborhoods. It doesn't tell us about specific neighborhoods. So we try to probe that in terms of specificity with our listening sessions by going out to areas that we identify as maybe neglected or in need or whatever, right? So, but that's how we would get
Would
there.
equity go to all areas?
Pardon me?
Wouldn't equity be going to all areas, not
It would,
just ones?
yeah.
Yeah, it would speak
But
to-
that's kind of what we tried to do with this past group of listening sessions.
Yeah.
But we want to broaden that, though.
Yeah, and this is part of the original wording, right?
Exactly, yeah.
That's not an added word that was there.
No.
Okay.
I also seem to remember the traffic data, because of our geography, we border
Yeah.
2 states
Yeah.
that,
People drive through a lot.
yeah.
You know?
And the fact that they don't collect the
Residents.
state is
Yeah.
kind of important
It is.
information that we don't have.
Yeah, which is
In-
why I asked. I mean, that would be, because we've, Cam and Paul have mentioned in the past that we do have people, a lot of people come through from New York and other areas, Massachusetts, even Pennsylvania, to go skiing. And a lot of times they're stopped because they're just not, they're on a mission, and they don't pay any attention to our traffic laws.
I think we have to realize that even though there's like a low number of whatever race you want to talk about in Bennington, that doesn't have to do with the traffic that goes through Bennington. It's a different denominator.
Yeah.
So, I
No,
mean,
we're
that's
just
gotta be-
we're trying to talk about equity and how we might define it and how
Yeah,
we
well,
might, I mean, how.
That's why
I'm
you
not
can't
sure
do it
how
with
to measure
percentage
it.
of racial in Bennington versus the population that travels through. They're
Yeah,
a different
and we're
denominator.
more, yeah, exactly. But we are not able to tease that out because we don't have a state of residence. We can't tease out who's
Yeah, that was a good
who's
question.
here
That was
and
a good
who's not.
question to find out.
Because that would also help with that state and national kind of data too.
Can I ask one more question?
Sure.
On, I don't know what line it is, 40 and a half, develop and analyze.
Yeah.
Is CPARB tasked with developing a database?
Yeah, that's the original word. Yeah.
How about find a database or?
No, but there isn't one that exists. So we would, I mean, it's just an Excel file. We did that, like Jonah
Oh,
gave us.
something that simple.
Yeah,
Okay,
we're
I
not,
thought
we're not talking about,
like
no.
designing a database.
Yeah, no.
Okay, thank you.
No, we don't, I mean, you would have had to have chosen very different people to sit on this board
Yeah.
if you wanted us to do.
So maybe instead of it
logistical
saying
regression.
database, you
Yes.
could say method or something,
Or
because database to
develop
me means,
Well, it just, I mean, we did that with safety data. Jonah put it into an Excel file. He just sent it to me, and then I analyzed it.
yeah, no, I'm not saying it
No, I'm
won't
just
work.
saying,
I'm saying
so-
that's not really a database. An Excel spreadsheet is not really,
Well,
No, because well, I think
we did crosstabs from it.
okay.
but it's not being maintained long-term.
No. And that was the safety data, and that was just from the last town survey, which was it 22 or 23? I don't remember, no. So, I mean, I was trying not to change too much of the original, but really give it more meaning and make it more relevant to something we could do.
Yeah, the term just doesn't work. The use of the term database does not really work for me, because I work in databases.
Sure.
And it's not a database if you're just using Excel, which is
Well,
perfectly fine
Sure.
in this instance.
Would it be just develop and analyze data?
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
so.
Definition is a structured set of data held in a computer, especially one that is accessible in various ways.
Yeah,
So it's not maintained in a computer for us to access at a later date, so probably wouldn't be a database.
okay. So we'll just say data. Okay. So well, the next thing that we're on is this, and this is the original, and there was no changes to this. Review existing collaborations with local organizations and agencies and make recommendations on ways to strengthen and develop additional working relationships between BPD and the community. That was part of the original. Okay? And then this next one, it was, the old one was develop a database utilized by the CPARB for the purposes of identifying problems, patterns, and positive actions. So that I cut entirely, and instead actively engage members of the community and other relevant groups in supporting a culture of inclusion, trust, and accountability in crime prevention through the use of listening sessions, attendance at community events, and other relevant activities. We've already got the database thing going on. So how does, that is a brand-new one? What's your thoughts? Any thoughts on that?
I mean, it does agree with one of the goals.
Yep. And it's something that we see as our as an important activity for us to educate.
I actually think that one should be first.
Yeah, it's a good intro.
So it's a good first activity?
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll set that up as the first one. Okay. Any other thoughts or questions on changes to the resolution? If not, then I'll make these changes as suggested tonight, and then next month, we'll hopefully be able to vote on it.
There's a few more changes.
Yeah,
Did you see
on the
that?
next page.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Every
Just
other month.
No, you're
Minor
absolutely
stuff.
correct. There's just two other ones. The one is on page 3, composition and eligibility. Thank you for reminding me.
And
Oh,
the
meetings.
frequency,
Yeah, under meetings, I'll do that one. The CPARB will meet monthly, the original is CPARB will meet monthly, in person or a virtual setting, and then it's et cetera. It's expected that each member, blah, blah, blah. The change is CPARB will meet CPARB will meet every other month in person. Okay, which is something that we were discussing earlier.
Yeah, and I
Thoughts?
think, along with, like, the things Scott talked about, I've thought some of those same things and felt the same way. So this may help that to a degree to where it's just not as frequent.
Yeah.
And maybe it can be more focused with that.
Yeah.
But the next one, you haven't read that yet, I'll wait.
Yeah, okay. CPARB will consist, the original is CPARB will consist of at least 5 and as many as 7 members from the community. And that's just a change from will consist of 7 members from the community.
No, you took out the at least 5
Yeah.
part.
Yeah.
So what happens if you only have 6 people that are interested? You can't have the board?
Well, we've got a staggered membership,
Right.
staggered inclusion at this point.
But what if you don't have anybody, when somebody's term ends, nobody's interested, there are 6 people still interested,
Yeah.
you can't exist?
Oh,
That's why she had
That's 5. okay. All right, we won't have this one, no. Good point.
Well, and then, yeah, so you can't serve more than 7 consecutive years, so that's
Yeah.
still there, okay.
thought
So
it was
you
5.
Huh?
Thought it was 5.
It says 7 down here.
Yeah,
Next, line 35. So I guess just, yeah, you may run into the same thing where people start to age out,
yeah.
and then if there's nobody to replace them. Yeah. Okay.
So is everybody on the board currently a Vermont resident?
No.
Oh, you have to be members must be Vermont residents. There you go. Hey,
I think I technically was at the time.
but you're not anymore?
No, we bought a house over the border.
Oh, my goodness.
I know.
Oh.
I think we did discuss that, though, and I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, we knew that.
Yeah.
There was no
They were
secret.
aware.
No, I didn't mean any secrets, but what does that mean for this?
I think that probably needs to be stricken.
Don't you work here in town, though?
I do.
Yeah, I think when that first came up, it was because she spends so much time in town.
Yeah.
And has so much involvement with the
Yeah.
community already.
Yeah.
It was kind of overlooked that she doesn't live in the state.
And what you do for a living
Yeah.
Right.
is pretty important.
So even if you want to change the wording, you could say a resident of Vermont or engaged in community
Involved in the community.
life or something.
It says
Well, and
that.
that's already here.
Yeah, so
Someone
that
who
should-
works or has demonstrated significant
Yeah.
8 hours per week or more commitment to volunteerism, but, yeah.
Hey, there I go. I'm definitely here more than 8 hours a
Yeah,
week.
so I would rather we struck that last statement.
Yeah, because they have to meet the other requirements.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Take-
Yeah, to do that. Okay. So, yep.
If someone has an issue with that, it could be, you could add some sort of language like, it's preferable
Yes.
if someone were a resident of Vermont, but exceptions will be made,
Yeah.
can be made, or something
Yeah.
like that.
Case-by-case basis.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
And I think that's the
I
last
think
of
the
them.
only thing, when you first mentioned it, I think you might have said March 12th, 2022. It was April Monday,
Oh,
I think. I can't remember.
Yeah.
no, it is April. Yeah,
For the
no, you're
minutes,
absolutely
purpose
correct.
of the minutes,
Yep.
yeah.
April 12th, 2022. So we're coming up on 3 years. Okay. Any other thoughts or questions about this?
So, just going to the Vermont resident thing, are we striking that? Or should it be modified that, I don't think it's important to be a Vermont resident, because if I'm a Burlington resident, I'm going to sit on this board.
Yeah.
I think it should be something specific to Bennington County, somebody that's involved in this area, even if they live in Massachusetts or New York, but they spend, half their weeks here, or, work here, or whatever. I think it's important that we focus on Bennington, not Vermont, because, like I said, you could live just south of Rutland, have no involvement in this community, but you're a Vermont resident.
That's a good point.
That is a great point.
But there is the statement, though, about someone who works or has demonstrated a significant commitment to Bennington.
Right.
So do we want to expand on that statement?
So I think we should, if we're going to go with that statement, commitment to volunteer, it maybe change that from volunteerism to, commitment to the Bennington community, and then strike the state,
Okay.
the state of residence. So if you're committed to the Bennington community, then I think that's more than acceptable, but being a Vermont resident shouldn't really be something that is required, because, New York is 9 miles and Massachusetts 11 miles and Burlington's 120.
That's right, that's right. Any objections, thoughts on that? Okay, I'll add that in there then. Okay. So that next month then, I'll present the changes and we'll vote on that. Okay. So as I said, then we'll be able to present this. What we're hoping is to be able to present this to be on the agenda for the Select Board in sometime in one of their meetings in November or early December, depending upon what their schedule is like, so that that can be in place for us for the rest of the year. Okay. Then let's talk a little bit about the listening sessions. And I wondered, I brought copies of the questions, just in case to review, if we wanted to change any of the questions.
So is this next round of listening sessions still focused on just community members, or were we thinking to do listening sessions with more community providers? I know we had discussed that.
Yeah, I think that's something that we have to decide, because one of the items that's on here is possible locations, and then start dates.
I really liked the idea of having a listening session with the police.
Yeah.
I do too.
Yeah.
That, I mean, the community is very important, but the police are very important as well, because they're going to have a different outlook on all of our questions than, most of the people that we're talking to. So I think that was an awesome idea. Very, very well, very good idea.
Great.
Yeah, and, are they being overburdened by too many activities, too? I mean, we need to get their feedback on that.
Any other locations? Do you think we should go maybe to Applegate? We went to Willowbrook last time. Or is Applegate too close?
I think it would be interesting to have a listening session with housing providers.
Okay.
I don't know how exactly that would work, if that would just mean larger corporations, or if we could pull together some local landlords too. I think they definitely have their own interactions with the police department. And
Like
it would,
Shires?
Shires, CRM or wherever, but I think it would be important to include local landlords as well. I don't know, maybe Brock could help facilitate that.
Okay.
I also was wondering, could we do a listening session, and this might be difficult just because they are very busy, but with some hospital staff, looking at calls for service. A lot of those calls for service come from the hospital.
Yeah, the social workers at the hospital would be really good.
Yeah, or I was even thinking like the ER staff, but they're just so busy. Yeah. Homeless Coalition, definitely.
These questions might not work in that setting.
Exactly.
however.
That's why my original question was, what is our,
Yeah.
Well, and we
population?
want to review those questions to see if we want to ask different ones. I mean, them knowing what community policing is or isn't seems to be essential.
Relevant.
Just because it differs from traditional law enforcement, and so there may be a different tack that the officers would take with whoever they're encountering in these situations.
What about somehow, I mentioned this, I don't remember when or where, the hospital was one of, to go to the hospital instead of having people come
Well, that's
to a listening
that's
session.
what we've tried to do.
Right,
When
and-
we're working with an agency, we go to them.
Right. I'm wondering about the school system. Could we glom on to
Yes.
a meeting, a district meeting that they're having already?
Union
Could we
meeting
have
or
10
something,
minutes
yeah.
on your agenda? The answer may be no, because they've got a lot to cover, I'm sure, but they must have, we probably missed the opportunity. They always have big meetings right before the school year starts, but we missed that. But
They might have staff development day too, and we could tag
Right.
on to that.
Or they may do, MAU meetings and
Yeah.
elementary school meetings. So.
Where else?
Other suggestions? We've got 4 or 5 right now. Remember, we want to try to set these up for October, November.
I think maybe having a bunch of us attend community events too, rather than going to them. Go like the backpack thing. I spoke with a lot of people just to pick their brain. But like we could go out to them rather than being dependent on them coming to us.
Well, and most of these, we go to them. That's what we do. We go to them. And we go to these agencies, and then whoever they have, whether those are staff or clients, whoever, they're there. So we do go there. What we try to achieve with the listening sessions, rather than a very informal thing like we did at the backpack event, was that this information then gets accumulated recorded and accumulated, and we compare it to the others, and we were asking specific questions so that everybody
Has the same
has the same sort of exposure to those questions, and we can get a better sense of, so what exactly is happening, rather than informal comments that we're not really writing down. I mean, you're not, when we go to the backpack, we're not writing things.
Well, that's what I meant. If we decide to do that, maybe write, have the questions and write them down, and then you get kind of a broad section of the community rather than a specific.
Well, if you've got a specific event that you're thinking about, let us know. I mean, that's the issue here.
I've never been to a listening session. Is there any attempt, I think you had said, or maybe I heard at our last meeting, that people often don't have a good understanding of what community policing is. So is there any educational component to the listening sessions? Okay.
That's how we start. We talk about what community policing is, mostly in terms of a description. We talk about examples.
That's perfect.
Of what it is. And because when you're just sitting down with regular people, they're not really interested in the theory or the philosophy of community policing as much as they are, so what does it mean for them? Which absolutely, that becomes important. So we give examples of that and talk a lot about engagement.
Cool.
And also, within the context, very often, people don't know what CPARB is or what our role is. So we talk about being a liaison as a conduit for information that passes back and forth. And obviously the foot patrols are a great example of that, because almost every without doubt, every listening session talked about foot patrols. And so they were able to bring that back to officers and make that happen.
That's awesome. Is there any kind of a takeaway people can take, any kind of document home?
We usually don't. It just adds, we're trying to make them really informal. So we usually don't, but it's very possible that that's something that we would want to do in the future.
And people can certainly take notes if they wanted to. Yeah.
Absolutely. But I guess that's why we wanted to talk about it. I mean, the question is do we want to have the same questions? Do we want to change those? Or do we want to keep that? What's your thoughts?
So I have an observation, and it's nothing to do with the questions themselves. We're talking about listening sessions with professionals, with nursing staff, with teachers, with educators. And I'm going to get emotional here. We're missing a huge group of people. We're missing normal, everyday citizens on the street. We've been asked to come back to Community Cafe. Lorraine said 3-4 times you're going to have to come back before people will trust you.
So,
and I don't see us moving on. Sorry, I'm a little emotional from that aspect.
Because that can be another location.
Yeah.
And so that's why I'm asking.
So maybe we should do another round of community-based, because there were communities that we did not, we were not able to get to at this point.
What about at the rec center?
Well, in what way do you mean the rec center? Do you mean like talking to?
Just have one there.
Have one at the rec center?
Where people are invited to come.
For that, yeah, because that's the whole like Gage Street and everything around there. I think we did discuss that. We had a very, very ambitious list for listening sessions, and I mean, we could go back to that list. There were definitely places that we did not connect with. I think the transitional age youth would be a great group to try to connect with, whether that means utilizing Sunrise. I know they have their youth development program, or UCS has some youth programs, or reaching out to DCF to see if they have youth that might want to participate in a listening session. I think that would be a good idea. The school, like, do they have student council, something like that,
I mean, for heaven's sake, you could go to Walmart.
Yeah.
So when do we want to start these? Because people need to have contact with the agencies or with the groups, and we need to be able to propose some dates to the folks. And we want to make sure that these are dates and times that members of CPARB can go.
I mean, I don't think that we should plan anything before the spring.
Oh, so you're not thinking October, November then?
I just don't think you're going to have people come out.
Well, if we went to, like, for instance, Molly Stark's school had a community event, one of their school events where they invited a lot of people. That would be the kind of place to go and then start asking people questions.
Ooh.
Because they're already there. The listening sessions I went to at Turning Point was really good. The other one I went to, nobody showed up.
What if, like, I will have to say it's been a long time since I've done anything like this, but when I was younger in this community, basketball games, wrestling matches, those were big draw events. The cafeteria is a large place. Would the school let us set up a table and just, it wouldn't be the same setup as we had for the other listening sessions. It would be more one-on-one conversations as people come and go, but we could change up the format.
And just take notes.
And, engage people. This is what community policing is. What is your opinion of community policing? Still maybe have the paper on the table so people could jot things down, questions. It's going to be harder to probably put together a summary, but it definitely would reach a larger population. It's a thought.
What do folks think about that? Would you be able to attend those?
I know, I could attend events like that, yeah.
Evenings are easier for me, yeah.
Would they be listening sessions or more like a community outreach?
Yeah, I think it'd be more
You might
community
get some of the
outreach.
same discussions, but.
Yeah.
It would be hard to document the discussions.
That's what I was just thinking.
Yeah, so that I'm trying to think, like, is there a way that we could document it? I mean, definitely you could ask for written feedback, and some people aren't going to do that, but.
Yeah, because there was a real richness with the listening sessions, because people could bounce thoughts
Round table.
around with each other and pick up on the stories and share their experiences in a way that just this outreach of giving information does not.
I think I would suggest going back to our original list for listening sessions and try to note places that we did not get to connect with, or communities within our community that we did not get to connect with, and circle back first and go from there.
Yes. With your idea, is there any, if people have the time and are willing to do it, is there any harm in doing it in addition to maybe
No, I
those regular-
think that would be a great way. I mean, one of the pieces that came out of the listening session is more education on what community policing is, what CPARB is, how to give complaints, how to give positive feedback. So that would be a great avenue to push out that information.
I feel like if you were in, just for instance, the cafeteria during a wrestling match, and people were coming up to the table, you wouldn't have that opportunity to do the education piece unless you were like repeating it every single time someone came up.
I think if we had print material.
Okay, there
We
you
would
go.
need print material.
There you go.
Here, this is what community policing is. What's your opinion? Do you know how to give feedback to the police department? Oh, you don't? Well, here's a procedure, pieces like that.
Great.
QR code. We love QR
What
codes.
probably we would miss is the stories. And the stories are important, I think, for us to be able to,
There is
as
a difference.
examples of.
Because you do lose that intimacy of sitting down. So I do agree. I think I think both would be beneficial,
Yeah.
but I would propose for our next meeting to look at that list that we originally came up with.
Sure.
And I've never been to one, so I'm just talking off the top of my head, but in a situation like the cafeteria situation, maybe if there was a team,
Yeah.
if one
that's what we've
person
always tried
had a
to do.
wonderful story to tell, then that person could go listen, but the other person could still be dealing with other people who didn't need as much time,
That's right.
or want as much time.
I want to circle back to the start dates, because Lindsay mentioned not until the spring. How do people feel about having them next month, starting next month? Is that too soon? Are people's schedules too crazy with fall and all the stuff that happens? What are your thoughts?
How if we took trunk or treat and visited trunk or treat with like maybe 2 or 3 people, and then had our material, and we could,
So that's
people
an
are just sitting
outlet.
around waiting, and that'd be a perfect time to talk with people, and you could probably engage really well, and then you
Trunk or treat is slammed.
Is what?
Is
Slammed.
slammed. You cannot hear.
No.
Yeah.
There's no conversation happening. It would be a great time to hand out material.
Yes.
Candy.
Conversation.
Flyers or whatever. Yeah, but that's it. We're not going to engage anybody in conversation.
It's just supposed to be fun.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
it
it's
is
just
fun,
fun.
but I don't think it's a bad idea. I don't think it's a bad idea to, have some candy, hand out a card with a QR code. Do you want to know more about community policing? But again, that might be something that Jonah needs to help us with print materials and what we can hand out and what we can't hand out.
But it's not a listening session.
Yeah.
So what I'm asking about is listening sessions. Obviously, we could do the outreach stuff. That is very possible. But do you want to start listening sessions next month?
I
You do.
would like to be involved with the police department. That should be one of our first listening sessions, I think.
If we can, I mean, it's
Yeah.
about, it is about scheduling.
Yeah.
So the question is do you want to start them next month?
Yes.
Yes, so Lindsay so
I just know that I am
you're not
swamped.
available,
My availability will be,
0.
no, there will be some, but it'll
Some,
just,
but
yeah.
little. So Jeff, Scott, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm good with it. It's just,
So, yeah, in terms of October?
Yeah,
Your
it
schedules
would
are
just-
such that it would be possible?
just depend on the day.
Day, yeah.
So right now, it really depends on the day. I'm in Connecticut 2 or 3 days a week right now.
Okay,
So like I said, it just depends on what day.
yeah, okay. And Vicki, you're on board, Scott, you'd be able to, okay. So availability may be spotty on that for October. How about November?
Hopefully it'll be done traveling by then, but I don't know.
Yeah.
It would be a better month for
A
me.
better month in terms of availability?
Mm-hmm.
All right, okay.
October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month, so we're just very busy,
Yeah.
and plus a bunch of other stuff too.
Sure. Any other thoughts on the starting dates? Okay, so we'll revisit this. Okay. Upcoming agenda items then. Anybody have things that they would like to be on the agenda? Obviously, we'll revisit the resolution, and we'll revisit the listening sessions and outreach. Anything else?
We talked about adding questions to this.
Well, adding or taking away?
Yeah, because I was thinking a good question would be, what would you like to see from the Bennington Police Department? That'd be a good way to kind of open up a discussion.
What does
even
that mean? What would you like to see? What does that mean?
Whatever people want to see. I mean, keep it open-ended so they could say how they feel, what they would like from the Bennington Police Department.
Okay, that's back on the above agenda item, but all right. That's
I missed my spot there.
Okay. Anything else for the next month's agenda? No? Okay. And then announcements. I've got one. The Charter Review Committee meets every Friday at 3 o'clock at Town Hall Conference Room. We are on the agenda. CPARB is on their agenda to determine whether or not we should be in the charter. Initially, it was proposed that, from the Select Board, that they talk about autonomy of CPARB. It's now morphed to authority. They're not talking about it, because I've gone to 3 of them, and then Vicki, Kelly, and I met with members of their subcommittee dealing with CPARB. So if you're interested in that, they're also talking about voting, properties, terms, in terms of administration for folks like Stu Hurd, as well as Select Board. So there's a bunch of things that they're considering changes to the charter. There's several steps. It has to be approved by Select Board, by the town, and eventually by the state. And so just to let you know, but we're in there. So they're talking about whether or not we should be in the charter.
They wouldn't come talk to everyone on
Well,
CPARB
I've
before doing
invited them.
something?
I've
Yeah.
invited them, and then they didn't seem interested. And then Kelly, Vicki, and I, as I said, met with their subcommittee.
Yeah.
And then I went to the last meeting last Friday, where they talked about some of the things that they're considering.
Yeah.
And then they had, and they're going to talk to Paul. The subcommittee will talk to
I
Paul.
would think they'd be interested in talking to all of us, but I guess not.
I guess not. And this is just my impression, so take it or leave it. It's worth not even a grain of salt. But they didn't seem to know what community policing was. So I sent the subcommittee some of our materials, the community policing short document that we created, and the DOJ document that explicitly talks about community policing, just because I thought that might be helpful to them in the deliberations, but nobody's even acknowledged receipt of that, so I don't know.
Not to backtrack, but did we want to invite Turning Point to the next meeting and put that on the agenda? I know there were some questions about their relationship with the police department.
I mentioned it to Kelly.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm sure Margay or someone will come, and
Oh, yeah.
they also could speak to us about the recovery home
Sure,
and give an update on that. I mean, it's not within our, but it's good to know about.
sure. So that's all I wanted to say
Can I-
about the Charter Committee. I
Can
think
I
if
go
you're
back?
interested, I think it would be the town hall that's open to the public.
Can I go back to that?
Sure.
What started their looking at this?
It was suggested at a Select Board meeting.
Okay.
So at a Select Board meeting, it was sort of open.
We got suggestions from the public.
Yeah.
And the charter has to be reviewed every 5 years.
Okay.
So it's just a cycle.
Yeah.
And 5 years ago, they reviewed the entire charter. This time, they're just doing a very small portion and limited, the scope is much more limited. And they're only, I think it's disbanding in November.
Yeah.
And just so you know, they can put whatever they want into the charter. The legislature has the final say, and they will take stuff out.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering about CPARB, if that's in the charter.
It's
and they're-
not in the charter.
I know, but if it were, and CPARB disbands at some point, what happens? So that,
Well,
I wouldn't be surprised if that's one thing that the legislature goes, no.
They're also suggesting that membership on the board have at least a couple of people who have law enforcement or legal background. Because it's been suggested that they might want to have whatever CPARB looks like, would have subpoena power.
So that would be changing it to more of an oversight
Yeah,
committee.
that was my concern.
Which, they'll never go for that. Which would make some people happy and some people unhappy.
Well, I mean, in Vermont, any oversight board has been disbanded, and it's like Brattleboro and Burlington don't even exist anymore. And so this model, I think that we have, whether people feel it's productive or not, is is irrelevant. It's really, we seem to be doing okay. Anyway, any other thoughts or comments about that? No? Otherwise, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion, we adjourn.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?